Hi, I'm Adam Summer. You're listening to the Yerushalmi Talk podcast with the support of the Yeshivat Devar Yerushalayim in Har Nof, Jerusalem. This is Sheviis, chapter 1, Halacha 2. This is part 2 of the shiur. We're going to finish up the shiur today. We were talking about the layouts and positionings of 3 trees. Now, I want to recap. There are, halachically, 2 kinds of fields of trees. The halacha talks about 2 kinds of fields of trees. One is where the field of trees has 3 trees, and one is where the field of trees has 10 trees. It's going to be 2 rows of 5. Now, what's the difference? And here's the difference. So, in the first case of the field of trees with 3, this is going to be where the root system is going to fully utilize the nourishment of the soil for each of the trees, and it's going to be spaced in a way where there's no overlap, and it's going to be where the roots are not going to overlap one another, and each root system is going to get the full nourishment, which is going to be 16 2/3 amos. But the problem with that on the Betseya is not all the land is utilized. So part of the land has gaps where the roots are not going to draw nourishment from, and so all your land is not utilized. So that is going to be the halacha on the trees. You have to look at it. These 3 are where you're taking, you're looking at the interests of the tree first, okay? The second kind of field of trees is the field of 10 trees. It's going to be 2 rows of 5. Now, in the first one, the layout is going to be circular. You're going to think about each tree, and you're going to make a radius around the tree to create a diameter, and it's like a circle, okay? But in the 2 rows of 5 for the 10 trees, it's going to be like boxes. It's going to be like 10 boxes, okay? And each of the trees is going to have a root system that extends out to 15.8 amos. Okay, that's going to be less than the maximum of 16 2/3 amos. So there's overlap. So all of the trees have overlap with one another. They're not going to exactly get full nourishment. However, all of the land is utilized. All of the Betseya is utilized. And this is where you're looking at the interest of getting all of the nutrients out of the specific plot of land. Both have the halachic status of a field of trees. Now, we're talking about this row of 3 trees because presumably you want to maximize your yield of these individual trees, which is why you laid it out this way. The Masechet and Sheviis is talking about fig trees, but this can be any kind of fruit tree. The thing that they care about is the yield. Why are they talking about fig trees? Well, fig trees, it's known how much they're going to produce per tree. And the other reason they're talking about fig trees is because the other thing that's going to be coming up in Halacha 3 is what happens if you're going to be using the trees for firewood. Now, there's a thing where you can plant more than 10 trees in a Betseya. Why would you be planting more than 10 trees in a Betseya? Well, you're planting it for firewood. And which is the kind of tree that they used to use for the fire? There's 2 logs that goes onto the fire every day in the Bet HaMikdash. It's the wood of a fig tree. So this is why they're talking about the fig tree. It's either talking about a standard use for the fruit, or it's talking about the firewood that would be used in the Bet HaMikdash. Now, we're going to talk about this row of 3 trees in the Mishnah, and then we're going to be getting into issues of fences, and we're going to then transition from the issues of fences to a very closely related topic about what happens on fields of trees up a slope. So we covered this in Masechet Peah, what happens if you have a field and it's along a slope of ground, and one part of the field is higher than the other part of the field. And the halacha over there in Masechet Peah was that if you can plow without lifting the plow, it's all considered one field. But if you have to lift the plow, and there's not a piece of land that is adjacent to it and connecting both of the fields, it counts as two different fields. It's not one field anymore. We're going to get into a similar topic at the end of this that's very much like that. So, but with fields of trees. So anyway, so the idea is, okay, what about this positioning about these three trees in the Mishnah? And the Mishnah is talking about this layout of three. Now, Rabbi Lazer asserts in this Gemara, if the three trees are in a straight line and the distance from one tree to another is 16 amos, and the distance from the trees to the sides of the field is 25 amos, one may plow the entire bet seah. Now, why is 25 amos coming up? What's going on with that? So that's going to be interesting. Now, we know that the temple courtyard is going to be a unit that's going to be divisible by this bet seah, right? We're talking about something that's also going to be related to the bet seah in layout, okay? And this bet seah is going to be 50 amos wide by 50 amos wide. Now, this comes up where a single fig tree is going to have where the root system in total can extend out for 25 amos, okay? However, not all of the root system draws nourishment anymore. So after 16 2/3 amot, those roots that are extending from 16 2/3 up to 25 no longer draw nourishment. And by the way, if you take in the middle of a row where this bet seah is going to be 50 wide and 50 long, and you plant 3 rows of trees in a straight line, such that there would be 8 amos from the bottom tree to the lower edge of the square, and then you plant 16 amos away a center tree, and then 16 amos away from that a center tree, and then you have 8 amos from the middle of the tree or the end of the tree up to the edge of this bet seah. That's going to add up to 50 seah. Now, if you take from the middle of the tree and you measure outward, okay, that's going to go 25 amos to the edge. And what this is trying to say is that you're allowed to plow the entire bet seah. So yes, not all of your bet seah is utilized with drawing nutrition out of the land. However, from that center line until the edge of the bet seah, the roots will grow out to 25 amot. And so it does cover the bet seah, but not all the nourishment is used. Now, again, after 16 2/3 amos up to 25, the root system of these trees will not draw nourishment anymore. This is covered in a later Gemara. Now, according to Rabbi Lazer, this is what he's trying to say is that the entire bet seah can be plowed only if there's a gap between the adjacent trees that does not exceed the gap between the trees when the 10 are going to be distributed evenly in the bet seah. So what this is trying to say is that if you're creating a straight line with a gap of 16 amos between one tree and the next, and between the outer tree and the edge of the field, there would be a distance of 8 amos. So that actually adds up to 48 amos, not 50, and the Gemara doesn't worry about the remaining 2. But what this is trying to say is that from the line of trees to the parallel sides of the field, there would be a distance of 25 amos, okay, and then 25 and 25 is 50, okay, and basically what they're saying is you're allowed to plow the entire thing. Even though not all of the field is utilized for nourishment, it is nonetheless, you are allowed to plow it. The Gemara is going to now move to a similar point next logical point is what happens if you have a fence separating part of the land. So Rabbi Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak asserted, when trees are positioned at the side of a fence, one may plow the entire Bethsaida on their account. Now, let me explain this. So you have this row of trees in the middle, and instead of standing in the middle of an open field, the trees, maybe they're next to a fence, okay? And we know in the halacha that a fence will act like a legal divider, okay? And that means that you're not allowed to plow on the other side of the fence. Why? Because it's a legal divider. So if you have in this center line a row of 3 trees, and 5 feet away or let's say 5 amos away, you have a fence, and then the rest of the Bethsaida is going to go, on the other side of the fence another 20 amot. This is saying that it's a legal barrier. You are not allowed to plow that 20 amot on the other side of the fence. Where you have the fence, that stops. That's what this is trying to say. It's a legal barrier. So the idea is that the Bethsaida that you are allowed to plow is going to be on your side of the fence. So you take the 3 trees, you take the edge of the fence, and you say, this is a Bethsaida, I can plow up to here. But you cannot cross the other side of the fence. Can't do it. Now, in the case of you have this fence dividing up the Bethsaida, and let's say you have another fence on the other side dividing it up so that now the area that you control is less than a Bethsaida, you can only plow less than a Bethsaida because you are limited there by 2 fences. You cannot plow on the other side of a fence. The fence is a legal divider, okay? That's a key concept to keep in your head. Now, the idea, says the Mara Fulda, is that Shmuel bar Yitzchak is disagreeing with Rabbi Lazer, who's saying that the trees must be distributed evenly throughout the Bethsaida. And the Vilna Goan says about this like this. He says that Rabbi Shmuel bar Yitzchak is inferring this law from the fact, this is the law about the fences, that the Mishnah does not distinguish between trees in the middle of a field and trees next to a fence. And the Mishnah is implying that even when the trees are actually right up next to a fence, says the Vilna Goan, one may still plow an entire Bethsaida. So you're legally allowed to plow a Bethsaida regardless of how these 3 trees are going to be laid out. Now, you can't plow on the other side of the fence. The fence is a legal boundary. But what happens again if you don't have a Bethsaida? What happens if somebody else's land is on the other side? Again, you can plow a Bethsaida minus the stuff on the legal boundaries. You can't go plow someone else's field. So you're not allowed to plow on the other side of the fence. You're not allowed to plow if somebody else has that piece of land after. Yes, you can plow a Bethsaida, but if you don't have a Bethsaida of land that you own, you can't go plow someone else's land. You don't control it. So, according to the Pnei Moshe, Rabbi Shmuel bar Yitzchak is really asking if a fence is going to act like a legal divider. That's really the idea here. And the Gemara is going to note that according to this previous ruling, it would be permitted to plow even more than a Bethsaida. Now, Rabbi Yosei is going to not play a game, but he's going to play a Talmudic game with this ruling. And he's going to show you something that's kind of neat. So let's imagine you have a movable fence, okay? And there are such things as movable fences. They have them for pasture for sheep and things like that. And let's say you have a movable fence. They have them now, chain link fences that are movable for pasture. And the Gemara notes like this. It says, Rabbi Yossi says, if one so wishes, he can devise that a permit be given to plow 4 bate seah on account of these 3 trees. And if he erects and then dismantles a fence on each of the 4 sides of the trees, he is permitted to plow a seah on this side, which would be the north side of the trees, and a seah on that side, which would be the south part of the trees, and a seah on the east side, which would be the east side of the trees, and a seah on this side, the west side of the trees. In other words, that says the Chazan Ish in 17:9. He's saying that if the fence is on the south side of the trees, he may plow the bet seah on the north. Then he shifts the fence to the north, and he can plow the bet seah on the south. And then he could do the same with the east and west. And ultimately, he would be plowing 4 bate seah, although there is some overlap. And this is a thing that is trying to, it's a sort of Talmudic game, right? But he's trying to show you the idea behind the law so you get it, right? So that, okay, he's not trying to teach you how to go, do something like this, right? What he's trying to show you is the idea behind the law. If you have a fence over here, you can plow from that edge of the fence. You got a bet seah. And by the way, if there was a, if you had the fence, oriented to the north, you would be able to plow a bet seah. And if you oriented it toward the east, that fence was oriented toward the east, you would be able to plow a bet seah. That's what Rabbi Yossi is trying to show out. He's also trying to show you cannot plow on the other side of the fence, right? You can move the fence, but if you move the fence to the north, you can't plow on the northern half of the northern side of this fence. That fence is a legal boundary. Even if you move it, it still is a legal boundary. You cannot plow on the other side of the fence. That's what this is trying to teach you. Now, the Gemara is going to present another case where one may plow more than the norm. So what case would this be? Rabbi Yirmiyah asserted that if you had a single grapevine and it was suspended on a trellis over an area of 2 bate seah. Now, this is going to be a vine that's going to be supported on a canopy, or it's going to be on some sort of trellis, and it's able to spread over an area of 2 bate seah. And you can find out more about this in Kalayim, chapter 6, Halacha 3. And the idea is, says this Gemara, you may plow the land beneath it and the land around it in the area occupied by the picker and his basket that he holds outside himself. Now, this comes up again and again. Okay, so this 2 amos area outside of the tree, this is the area where the person can walk around the tree with his basket to pick the outside fruit. That's included. Now, the idea is that you're allowed to plow all of the area under the canopy of a tree. So if you oriented a grapevine on a trellis, and this grapevine goes all over the place after 20 years, and it's just very, very wide, even suspended over an area of 2 bate seah, right? Much, much bigger area than what we were talking about. We were talking about 1 bet seah. This is now 2. So this is a very, very large plant, and you're allowed to plow the area underneath it. That's what Rabbi Yirmiyah is pointing out. Why is that? Why are you trying to show this? Well, the idea is that you are always allowed to plow underneath the tree, even if these other things are going to be where, let's say you have, 3 trees, and the 3 trees on this bet seah does not produce this amount of fruit, well, then it's considered like a field of grain. You can't plow the whole Bethsaida, but you can always plow the area under the canopy of the trees, plus that little tiny area where the picker and the basket can go around the outside of the tree. It's 2 amos that's added to the outside of the canopy. That's the idea. Now the Gemara is going to talk about a novel law regarding the permit to plow an orchard before Sheviis. Gemara says like this. It says, during the time that the prohibition of the 2 early periods was in effect. Now, what is this? This is talking about after Rabban Gamliel repealed the pre-Sheviis prohibition on plowing. Although the halacha was no longer in practice, the Gemara is teaching that the law was, when the pre-Sheviis prohibition was still in effect, the 2 early cutoffs would be Pesach, that would be for a field of grain, and Shavuot, that would be the cutoff for the orchard. That's the idea here. Okay, so it's talking about when you had these 2 early periods, that would be Pesach for the grain field, and for the field of trees, it's going to be Shavuot. And again, to recap, if there's a debate between Bet Hillel and Bet Shammai, it's almost the same time, but Bet Shammai does not have a hard date. Bet Hillel did. That would be Shavuot. We go by Bet Hillel on that. So the hard date is Shavuot on the field of trees, and the Gemara is going to be talking about, if you had rows of trees that were on this mountainside slope, and one is going to be higher than the other, and then they are separated by a Bethsaida. Okay, so the law is that, says this Gemara, for these upper trees, one may plow as far as 25 amos below them, and that the upper half of the Bethsaida, and for the lower trees, one may plow as far as 25 amot above them. In other words, up the lower half of the Bethsaida. And so it emerges that one may plow the entire Bethsaida that lies between the 2 rows of trees. But that's going to be hard to understand, because you're implying, okay, it's my own commentary, you're implying that the roots are going to grow upwards, right? So if you have a slope on a hill or mountaintop, and you have this row of trees, you're assuming that the lowermost tree is going to have roots that are going to be going upwards as far as 25 amot. And is that going to be the case? Are you going to have that lower tree have roots go up like that? That's very surprising. The Gemara challenges this ruling, and it says, it is understandable that for these upper trees, one may plow 25 amot below them, since the roots certainly extend downward. And that makes a lot of sense. I mean, if you're looking at this row of trees up a mountain slope, and if you're looking at the topmost tree, of course, it can go down 25 amot. That makes a lot of sense. But what about roots going upwards? That seems very, very surprising. The Gemara continues and says, but why should it be that for these lower trees, one may plow 25 amot above them? And basically, it's implying that roots do not extend that far upward. That maybe the roots will go up a little bit, but not like that. And the Gemara is going to try to resolve this problem. And the Gemara is going to say, let us infer the solution from the following Mishnah. It says, this is going to be referring, by the way, to Baba Batra 2.7. You can find that in the Bavli 25b. And it says like this. It says, one must distance a tree 25 amot from his neighbor's pit. Now, why do we care about a neighbor's pit? Why do you have to move 25 amot away from the neighbor's pit? Now, we learned that this 25 amot has special significance because the tree will grow roots up to 25 amot. However, the nourishment the tree will get is only going to go as far as 16 2/3 amos. the distance between 16 and 2/3 amos from the trunk of the tree until that outward expanse of 25 amot for the end of the root system, the Gemara says, does not draw nourishment from the ground. It's just there. Okay, so if you have a pit in a field, they're saying you're not allowed to plant trees, especially if you're a neighbor. If you're a neighbor, you're not allowed to plant trees within 25 amot of your neighbor's pit. Why are you making a pit there? Why do you have a pit there? Well, let me explain. You might be putting a pit in the middle of the field so that you can take buckets and easily water some trees or herbs or things that you have there. So in other words, you would dig a pit and you would put buckets there, and you would be able to draw water from a centralized part of a field. And so instead of having a channel, you would be digging a water pit so that you could water your stuff if you needed to. And another reason that you might have a pit in the middle of a field is perhaps you have a pasture and you want to have water available if you have ducks or geese, or you're going to have water available to give to sheep and to cattle. You might want to fence it off so they don't walk into it. But nonetheless, there is a real economic reason why you would put a pit in the middle of the field. Now, the problem is if you are the neighbor and you're planting a tree within 25 amot of that pit, the roots are going to extend into that pit and they're going to destroy the pit. And now you just damaged your neighbor's property because it's going to lose integrity and structure, and it's going to fall apart, and he's not going to be able to use it. So the Torah law is very precise, and as you see in Baba Batra 2:7, you're not allowed to plant within 25 amot from the neighbor's pit, because you're not allowed to destroy it. Now, what about if the pit is going to be higher than the trees? Then are you still going to have that requirement where you can't put a tree within 25 amot? Let's say the tree would be below the pit. Would that still hold? Now, the idea is that since you have roots that can go up to 25 amot from the tree, we don't want the roots to break the walls of the pit and to cause it to fall apart. And so what about if the pit is going to be above the tree is going to be below? Do you still have to worry about the tree growing roots up to 25 amot into that pit, that water pit, and breaking it apart? Is that going to be the case? And the Gemara is going to try to resolve this. It says, let us infer a solution from the following Mishnah. It says, one must distance a tree 25 amot from his neighbor's pit. And a Baraisa teaches regarding this Mishnah, the tree must be distanced 25 amot, regardless of whether it is above or below the pit. And since this Baraisa is imposing a 25 amot separation where the tree is going to be below the pit, it's trying to prove that the roots of the tree can, in fact, go up 25 amot, growing up the hill. Now, the Gemara is going to try to deflect a possible misreading of that Baraisa, and it's going to say, because this is kind of controversial, this is kind of the point of this, right? Will the tree grow roots going up the hill, even into the guy's pit? And the Gemara says, now, we might say that when the Baraisa states whether above or below, it means whether the tree is above and below the pit, or whether the tree and the pit are below. What is this trying to say? This is saying both the tree and the pit are on the same level. That's what this is trying to say. So only in these two cases where the pit and the tree are going to be at the same level, in other words, if the tree was in a row of three and it was the upper tree and there was a pit that would be on the side of this upper tree, that would be at the same level. Similarly, if there's a row of three trees and you have a tree at the bottom of this hill and a pit adjacent to it, it's saying that you gotta be 25 amot away. And only in these two cases, this deflection is trying to say, would it be necessary to distance the tree 25 amot away from the pit. But if the tree is below the pit, the 25 amot separation does not need to be maintained because it's trying to say roots do not climb up 25 amot. And the Gemara is going to say, however, this is not correct because another Baraisa says explicitly the tree must be distanced 25 amot from the pit, regardless of whether the tree is above and the pit is below, or the tree is above and the pit is below. Or the tree is below and the pit is above. And the real question is, are these roots going to extend up 25 amot? And if they're not going to extend up 25 amot, then you don't need to worry about the pit as much. You can plant it closer. The Gemara is going to give a different proof. It's going to say it is understandable that the 25 amot separation is mandatory where the tree is above and the pit is below, but why must this separation be maintained where the tree is below and the pit is above? And the idea, says this Gemara, is that it is the way of roots to climb 25 amos upward. And therefore, it's saying that the same would apply with regard to Sheviis, that if you had trees planted on a slope, one may indeed plow as far as 25 amot above them. But again, this is going to be deflected. And Rabbi Hanina says that the reason for this restriction against planting a tree below a pit might not be because of the roots climbing upward and breaching the walls of the pit, but because the roots make the earth loose. And that will damage the floor of the pit. And alternately, the Bryces failing to prove that the roots will extend 25 amot up. In other words, the roots, this is saying, says the Mara Fulda, and it's also the conclusion of Bavli Babu Batra 25b, that roots are going to go horizontally and they're going to reach the earth beneath the floor of the pit, and it's going to loosen the dirt there, and it's going to cause the floor of the pit to collapse. That's the idea. So it's saying that the roots themselves are not going to grow up 25 amos and breach into the pit. However, what it's going to do is going to grow out horizontally, and it's going to make the earth loose, and that's why you can't plant it 25 amos away if the tree is below and the pit is above, because it's not from the roots growing into the pit, it's from the roots growing out horizontally and loosening the earth and then undermining the pit. That's the idea. And the Gemara is determining this issue in an actual incident, and it says that an incident involving one who wished to plant a tree on a slope below a pit came before Rabbi Yassa, son of Rabbi Bun, for judgment. And Rabbi Yassa said this Baraisa that required a distance of 25 amot, even when the tree is below the pit, is merely the view of an individual. And we do not rely on it to determine the halacha because the sages disagreed with him. And it says, and we find this dispute in another Baraisa, which teaches regarding it. Rabbi Shimon says, just as they required a separation of 25 amot when the tree is above the pit, so did they require such a separation when the tree is below the pit. And the sages, however, hold that this separation is not required when the tree is below the pit. And so we can see that according to the majority of the opinion, the roots of the tree do not climb upward 25 amot, and therefore, says Arash Cirilio, with respect to Sheviis, one may not plow 25 amot above the trees that are on a slope, and that means that the Gemara's initial ruling on this matter was rejected. That's what this is trying to say. So that's going to conclude Chapter 1, Halacha 2, and we're going to go into more detail on Halacha 3. Have a great day.